Hello everyone and good evening. Alright, as you can see we had a bit of a technical drama here today, and what we're going to do is carry on with our lessons. Now previously we talked about the perception of reality, alright, and we spoke about the wisdom of Kabala, what it is, how the history of it is, how it developed from Adam, and from there on we took out one of the main topics, which was whether our reality was real or not, and how we were observing it. By the way, we just came back from work. As you know, we're all volunteers here, so the team is coming back from work, so sometimes we're in a bit of a rush and out of breath, but you'd all like to know that we'll be going on as scheduled. If you have any questions, as usual, okay, please jot them down here, and we'll be more than happy to answer them. The team will take those questions on, and then we'll move on today into a topic that is very, very important and interesting. When we're trying to understand, actually not quite understanding it, when we're trying to understand the perception of reality from the perspective of the wisdom of Kabbalah, and we're trying to reflect everything inwards to get a perspective of what our essence is, what our real material is. We have to add on to that a new concept in this lesson, because we talked about how everything is perceived inside a person and how our feelings are actually the interpretations of this feedback we get from the outer environment, call it what we see, hear, taste, smell, touch, and so forth. But on top of that, when we want to develop to a higher level of consciousness, what's obviously going to happen is we're going to have to build a new tool. We're going to have to build a new device in which we can perceive something that our five senses are not capable of sensing. In order for us to do that, we need to develop something in the wisdom of Kabbalah called intention. So let's just see, hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm drawing. Okay, great, and there we go, there I am, and there are you. Great. So we talked about how we are a desire to receive pleasure. There's a desire to receive pleasure. And we also talked about how this desire to receive pleasure, we just wanted to get fulfilled in life. All our life we just run after pleasure. And that's what we seek, because that's what our nature forces us to seek. We want to have pleasure. We want to be happy. We want to be fulfilled. And we understood in the first few lessons in the wisdom of Kabbalah that it's really impossible to be fulfilled in this world, in this reality, simply because the pleasure and the desire, they cancel each other out. So if the feeling cancels my desire out, I've got nothing to get pleasure from. So all of a sudden I'm back to square one. So we're in this vicious cycle of constantly chasing one desire after another, trying to fulfill ourselves, which will never happen the way we're living right now. So the Kabbalists are saying, well, listen, if you got this dot in the heart, as we discussed before, this little urge inside of us who's asking the meaning of life, then we have an additional factor which we can now utilize next to this desire to receive. So I have a desire to receive, and I have this dot in the heart. This is seeking pleasures, but the dot in the heart is seeking something else. It's also seeking pleasure, but it's seeking a pleasure which is related to the nature of the creator. All right, and we talked about this creator, right? Call it creator, God, Allah, it doesn't matter, Elohim. There's only one creator, one force. Kabbalists are describing it to us in that way. There's only one force that is controlling the whole of reality, with numerous other forces. So the creator is like governing the whole of reality in this relating in a certain specific type of relationship towards us. So he has a relationship towards us, and this relationship towards us is felt through what we call reality, which in the previous lesson we said that we're only feeling it inside ourselves. So the whole of reality is in us. This is where reality is felt. So the Kabbalists say where reality is felt. So the Kabbalists say that on the outside there is no reality, there's just the Creator's relationship towards us, and this relationship towards us is seen, heard, smelled, tasted and touched in our five sensations as this reality, but it is all felt inside of us. Now, in addition to that, we have this dot in the heart. This dot in the heart is a very, 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 very critical thing, because without this dot in the heart, we never ask the question what the meaning of life is. So this guy is the urge to discover. It's still a desire, or it's not a full desire yet, it's an urge. You know, it's like sometimes you have this little feeling that you want to do something, something pinching you. It's an urge to discover the meaning of life. Okay? The meaning of life. Ta-da! So it's very easy to do that. The urge to discover the meaning of life. Now, when these two things, the desire to receive and the dot in the heart, come together, there's a very special impact. Now we have a desire to receive, and now we're asking the meaning of life. And now, if we've discovered that the wisdom of Kabbalah is the right thing for us, as we learned in the previous lessons, that our existence in this world as humanity, okay, let's do it this way, as humanity developed for thousands of years, and they developed the still vegetative, animate and human levels, still vegetative, animate and human levels, as we discussed in the previous lesson, so I'm not going to go over that. And now we're at a phase in the 21st century where the dot in the heart in a lot of people are awakened. Now, if a person comes with this dot in the heart plus his desire to receive pleasure, desire to receive, he is still incorporated in this desire to receive with all these levels. Okay, they're not cancelled. So I still have this big desire to receive towards corporeal pleasures and desires and so forth, but also I have this dot in the heart. Now this thing becomes special now, because if a person comes to study the wisdom of Kabbalah and now he understands that the whole of reality is actually felt inside himself, and that there is really nothing on the outside, and this desire to seek pleasure actually will never get fulfilled. It just will not get fulfilled. And if it understands that, now it has an option. It has a choice to go after a sixth sense called a soul, okay, and to develop this through the wisdom of Kabbalah. Let's call this the wisdom of Kabbalah, in order to receive, in order to go into a higher level of consciousness. All right, and this higher level of consciousness is called infinity, the world without end. It's called the world without end is because we perceive it like it's endless, and it is also known as endless. Oops, let's do it with a bit of a positive note. And it's also known as the world of pleasure, everlasting pleasure, or sometimes they like to call it heaven, or the Garden of Eden, or the Garden of Heaven. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, a person in this world has a desire to receive, with his desire to receive in his body, okay, in his bodily form while living in this world. If he gets this dot in the heart, he has an opportunity to develop it and go into a higher level of consciousness where he can perceive the Creator and actually be in connection with the Creator and govern reality with the Creator as partners. So we're talking about here a situation where the Creator and the created being are united, or are partners, equal partners actually. Okay, and the whole of reality is actually designed for this one purpose only: to equalize man to the level of the Creator. Now this equality, this level of existence can be achieved by adding this new thing we're going to learn in this lesson today, and that's called an intention. Now intention, okay, intention, when we talk about intention, you know, we're probably talking about why we do something, and that's true. Why? We're talking about why we are doing something. In our reality, we also are working with an intention, aren't we? When we run after a pleasure, our intention is to get fulfillment. Either way, we want to get fulfilled. We want to get what we want to get, so that what we can do after that is, you know, feel content and feel successful, happy, you know, be on top of the world kind of thing. Now, that is called a desire to receive pleasure for myself in order to fulfill myself. That's an intention. Now, the problem with that kind of an intention is it's an egoistic intention. And ego, if you look at the Oxford English Dictionary, is giving value to yourself, making yourself more valuable. Right? And what happens at that stage is, because I'm giving myself more value and I want to get more than others, I'm actually decreasing the value of others. Therefore, an egoistic nature in this life means that when I'm taking, it's at the expense of others. And that is something very critical we need to know, because that's the flip that needs to happen. We're a desire to receive pleasure, and we don't want to change that. That needs to stay. We're intended to actually have pleasure, but not egoistically. We're intended to have pleasure in a different way. We're intended by the Creator from the beginning of creation to be fulfilled with pleasure in a way that He feels pleasure, fully content, fully capable of doing everything, completely free of our egoistic nature. And this kind of pleasure is called having the same pleasure as the Creator, and that's what makes the created being kind of like be integrated with the Creator in a partnership form. So this is very, very important for us to understand, that the desire to receive pleasure is not going to disappear. This is what we are, this is our nature, and it's good that it's that way, and the Creator initially intended that to be that way so that we could receive pleasure. However, on top of that pleasure, we have an egoistic nature, which is called the intention for myself. And when we're talking about correcting the desire to receive, we're actually talking about this intention, you know, the intention for myself. And the intention for ourselves in this world, also known as egoism, what happens is it reduces the state of others while elevating myself on top of others. And that kind of thing is not in the Creator's nature. So we have to change this intention so that it becomes compatible to the Creator's intention. And the wisdom of Kabbalah is actually studying only the actions of the Creator and the intentions, so that we can adapt our intentions to the Creator and accordingly become elevated to His level of existing. This intention is also known as the soul. You can call it the sixth sense, call it whatever you like. It's a tool, it's a tool of perception where you can feel the Creator. And that is the purpose of life. So we're going to take a look at that today. All right. So let's see what we have here. So we spoke about that, what our desire to receive is, how it works, and what we need to do with it. So let's read a little bit from the texts and the writings so that we can give this lesson a bit of a direction from the sources of the Kabbalists. So we're going to read from the writings of Baal HaSulam, Yehuda Ashlag, and in his preface to the Wisdom of Kabbalah in item 1 he says, "The will to receive is the whole substance of creation from beginning to end. Thus all the creatures, all their innumerable instances and conducts that have appeared and that will appear are but measures and various denominations of the will to receive." So what we have here is a creation, and in that creation what we have is a state where everything is felt inside that desire to receive. So with this big desire to receive, okay, this big desire to receive, and the whole of reality is in here. Everything is here. All right? It's very important for us to understand. This is why the desire to receive can never and will never and must never be eliminated or disregarded or thrown away. Okay? We must understand that all of reality will be felt at the end of everything, at the end of the purpose of life, all in here. And everything in reality is a part of this. So in fact, this should lead us to understand one simple thing. You, me, the whole of reality, the galaxy system, space, planets, our planet, all the animals, all the flowers, all the trees, everything is one created desire to receive. And we as humans are part of it. Now normally we humans like to think we're above everything else because we think we're smart, you see. Unfortunately we're not very smart, and we'll actually soon discover that in reality we're probably the dumbest of all creations. In fact, dumber than animals, because you'll see that animals have a much peaceful life than we humans do. However, from this complete mess, this complete, how do I even say it? This complete evil, okay, complete disaster, the opposite of perfection, the complete opposite of perfection, we have an opportunity to get to perfection, which animals, plants, and the still level, they don't have an opportunity to do so. So this complete oppositeness of our nature to the laws of real nature, which is harmony, which is everything is flowing in one harmony except humanity. So from these two opposite states, we have actually the opportunity to close that gap by attaining spirituality, and that is to actually first of all discover that the whole of reality is inside of us, and that there is nothing in reality except this desire to receive. And that's what Baal HaSulam wants to tell us. So what we have to do here is first of all understand that we're a desire to receive in an egoistic way, and that the Creator is our opposite, and He's a desire to bestow in a loving way. So if we put ourselves back in order here again, all right, let's do this. So we're a desire to receive, and the Creator, we want to receive, and the Creator is bestowal. So we are complete opposites to the Creator, and this is why we feel suffering here. Humanity is suffering. The whole of reality is suffering, actually. If you look at 2019, it has been nothing but a mess of natural disasters all around the world. Floods, storms, landslides, earthquakes, volcano eruptions, one after the other, everywhere, from South America to North, Europe, Asia Pacific, Asia, everywhere. And we're going to see much more of that in the coming period, in the coming months. Why are we going to see that? Well, because we are so opposite to nature that in order to get us back to balance, nature has to kind of show us that we're in conflict. Okay, so humanity on the one side with its egoism, and nature on the other side with its balanced form. When nature is losing its balance because of humanity, nature has to fight back. That fight back is going to be what? Natural disasters, isn't it? So natural disasters have been already, if you look at February and March, it's all over the world. And like I said, we're going to have much more. What happens is it begins to push humanity to start thinking and refraining from doing silly things. This is why already here we're trying to improve the environment in our, in whatever way we can. It's not going to help. Okay, humanity's efforts to improve the environment also is not going to help, simply because what needs to change is our nature. Our egoistic nature has to change. Until this changes, you cannot improve the world. It's not going to happen. Okay, so so our egoistic nature needs to change. And until this happens, they can do all the environmental, they can take all the environmental precautions they like. They can, put a hold on fossil fuel, whatever. Nothing will work. Nothing. Okay? All the solar power in the world is not going to save humanity. The only thing that will save humanity is changing our nature, our egoistic nature, so that we can equalize it to the nature of the Creator. And when we're equalized, then we have something to talk about, because that's called balance. When we're bestowing and He's bestowing. Because the Creator's nature is love and bestowal. Now you might say, well, I don't feel like the Creator is very loving and bestowing, because we have a really miserable life. The world's all over the place. It's a big mess. We always have wars somewhere. We always have big crimes. All kinds of things are happening in the world that are just not signs of love and bestowal, is it? Well, of course not. How can it be signs of love and bestowal when we're completely egoistic and we completely disregard everybody else, and we try to use everybody else with our egoistic nature? And how can we expect a good relationship or a good relation from the Creator if we're not behaving in a good way? If our children are constantly causing problems, what do? We tell them to calm down. They're being naughty and they need to sort themselves out. So we tell them off, don't we? Well, the Creator isn't going to come out from the clouds and all of a sudden say, hey, what are you guys doing? He's going to let the laws of nature talk to us. And this is why life will become something like a bottleneck for humanity. It's going to squeeze us. Okay? So when life is starting to squeeze us, we start to ask this question about what we can do. And soon humanity will come to understand that what we need to do is change our nature. And until that changes, and until we start to relate in bestowal as well, instead of egoists, we start to bestow, and we start to connect in a good way, connect in a positive way, then this equilibrium, this balance can occur, and the whole of humanity will only find peace then. Other than that, we're not going to find much peace. So doing good in life doesn't necessarily mean we're doing good. Doing good in terms of spirituality means that we're actually advancing towards that higher level of consciousness where we're trying to change our nature to become more bestowing and more loving towards other people, and from other people we build this special relationship with the Creator, which is called this relationship that can be that can be created via a soul, and then that relationship can exist, and then we can feel the Creator as we are living in this world. So it's a very important aspect, concept that we need to get our heads around, and that thing is called changing of intention. So the desire to receive stays as it is, but we change our egoistic intention to an intention of bestowal, and that's where the whole flip happens. So let's see what else they're telling us about this lesson. When, for example, one moves one's hand from the chair to the table, it is because one thinks that by putting his hand on the table, he will enjoy it more. If he did not think so, he would leave his hand on the chair for the rest of his life without moving it at all. So our nature governs us in such a way that everything I do, even the movements, even my hand movements, my body movements, everything is always seeking comfort and balance. So our nature is actually seeking balance. With all our movements, we just want to be in a state of tranquility. And the reason we're moving all the time is because we lack that tranquility, just like it says here in the article. Because if we were content in that certain state, we'd never move. For the rest of our lives, we'd never move. So what we want to do is to make sure that we understand that our every movement, our every thought, every desire, every intention is all working towards sucking everything inside of us. Because we want to get everything. It is a natural law. We're continuing to read from an article called The Giving of the Torah. It's a natural law for any being that anything outside one's own body is regarded as unreal and empty. And any movement that a person makes to love another is performed with a reflected light and some reward that will eventually return to him and serve him for his own good. Thus such an act cannot be considered love of another because it is judged by its end. It is like a rent that finally pays off. However, the act of renting is not considered love of another. But making any kind of movement only a result of love of others without any spark of reflected light and no hope for any kind of self-gratification in return is completely impossible by nature. This means that all the good deeds that they do, either towards their friend or towards their God, are not because of their love for others, but because of their love for themselves. And that is because it is completely unnatural. So the Kabbalists are saying every good thing that we even think we do to other people is because we get self-gratification. We get pleasure from it. We enjoy people's respect. So despite every good thing that others are doing, we're doing, the Kabbalists are saying, well, that's not really good at all actually, because you're actually doing to make yourself feel better, or you're doing it to maybe win the elections, let's say. There are elections going on around the world. So maybe you're seemingly doing good to people because you want to win the elections, or you're doing good to your friend because tomorrow you want to ask him for a favor again, to get something back. We always have a calculation, or simply to feel good. Even if I'm helping an old lady cross the road, I feel good about myself. You see, everything we do in life, everything has a calculation that comes back to ourselves. So everything we do, everything is egoistic. It will always be that way until our nature changes. And we don't even see ourselves as egoists. Most people see themselves as being good people. They say, listen, I help other people, I give to charity, and so on. But we do everything with an intention to receive for ourselves, even if we're not conscious of it. Many people live unconsciously. They don't even know why they do things. They don't even ask themselves why they do things. They just do things. our body, our actions, the way we do everything, think about everything, it works as an automatic program. It's like a software. It's like these new robots they're making in Japan or in other parts of the world on artificial intelligence. You put a program into it and it works. It moves. Same with us. Just like these robots need electricity or something like that, like a battery or something to move, we also need pleasure to move. And that's how it is. It's a very simple formula. So our whole human nature is actually, our whole human life and existence is this series of urges that instinctively pop up inside of us. And we just follow those urges to realize them, thinking we're going to get pleasure from them. Everything we do is directed in that way. The whole intention is directed in that way. Everything. So we're more like a machine rather than a created being. In fact, in the wisdom of Kabala, we're not even a created being at the moment. Because to be a created being, you actually have to perceive and understand who created you so that you can say, wow, I'm a created being. At the moment, with the level of consciousness in this world, we're not even there. So this is why this dot in the heart, this spark in the heart is so important and critical for a person to ask about the meaning of life, start studying Kabbalah, to go through this whole process of enlightenment. Until one discovers actually that one is a complete egoist, it's quite a bit of a study. So this is what we're going to be doing throughout the semesters this year. So if you carry on studying with us, if you haven't registered to the Education Centre, you still can register. So you can follow up these courses. And once we're fully, through with the topics of the first semester, we'll be going on to the second semester. We'll be discussing the worlds and the structure of reality and creation. We'll be going into these topics a little deeper. And through that, we'll be able to start to actually give ourselves a new perspective with our lives and how we can kind of adapt ourselves into our daily lives as well. So let's read a little bit more. Now the soul, wow, this is a bit of an interesting topic. Okay, the soul, let's take a look at the soul. Now the Kabbalists describe to us there's actually one soul. Okay, and this one soul here, if we can come to the drawing board. Yes, Shmuel, Anthony. Okay, so we have one soul. There we go. So we have there's actually one soul. What does it say? Even in the holy books it says God created just Adam. So Adam, this one soul, Adam, in the Garden of Eden, meaning that he was in connection, he was in unity with the Creator. Okay, and that's it. There was actually only just one soul, and all of us, however many people there are, let's say there are 8 billion people on the planet, are all parts of this soul. Now, it's not a matter of quantity, it's a matter of quality. And the soul doesn't necessarily mean we all have the same thing. Because at the end of the day, the whole of reality can be today 8 billion, tomorrow it could be 4 billion. So it's not about the number of head counts. Okay? It's about counting attributes. Attributes of bestowal that actually can unite with the Creator. So the whole of reality, although we see 8 billion people in the world in terms of bodies, when it comes to spirituality, there's only one soul. Now the question is, how we're going to perceive reality as we're living in this one soul. And that is the wisdom of Kabbalah. So a lot of people, as you know, in religions, there are thousands of religions. There are more than 4,000 religions in the world. And most of these religions say that when we die, we're going to go to hell or heaven. We're going to go somewhere anyway, okay? And that's where we're going to kind of exist, okay? And the Kabbalah is saying that there's no such thing. That's just a joke. Nobody's even been there and back to tell you about it. What must happen is, currently with 8 billion people we are, if a person has a dot in the heart, what should happen is, as they study Kabbalah, they begin to fill their location of where they need to be in the structure of this one soul. This one soul is also sometimes called Adam Harishon. Okay? Adam Harishon. Adam Harishon means the first man. Okay, so Adam Harishon, first man. In the books, it'll be sometimes written as that, so I want you to also know the technical term for it. Well, literally it just means first man. So all of us who have dots in the heart and want to discover the purpose of life need to understand that all of us are a part of a system that we need to integrate ourselves into. And as we do, we can then discover that perfection to a certain degree. And as the whole of humanity is getting there, our perception will begin to increase and increase and increase until it encompasses the whole of humanity. And that will bring all of us to the purpose of creation, because the purpose of creation is for everybody, you know. It's not just for a few people or a few chosen people. There's no such thing. All right? So religions say, well, if you're in our religion, you'll make it. If you don't, you won't. That's just a lie. So what we need to do is attain spirituality, all of us together. And as we do, all of us rise together to a higher level of consciousness. Now, some of us may be a bit more advanced. Some of us may just be starting, and that's okay. That's how it is in life as well, isn't it? When we're born, we have parents, we've got grandparents and so on. They look after us, they raise us, and so on. It's no big deal. What happens is, as a group of people attain spirituality, they help others. And this help to others increases enlightenment. And for many of you who are probably looking for the meaning of life, how do you think you guys all of a sudden started asking questions about the meaning of your life? Because somebody somewhere, maybe on the other side of the planet, let's say me or the friends here, they started studying spirituality to discover the meaning of life. And because the whole of humanity, the whole of reality is connected to each other. We're all interconnected, everyone. Africa, Europe, Asia, Middle East, America, North, South, Australia, everywhere. We're all connected into this one system. So when one part of the system is advancing towards spirituality, to a higher level of consciousness, these vibrations start to influence all the others. It's like waves. So these waves start to influence other people. And all of a sudden, you guys in Africa, or you guys in Asia, or the Middle East, or America, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, doesn't matter where, start to ask this question. Yesterday you weren't asking about it, but today you are. Why? Because that accumulation, and that's a qualitative thing, it's not a quantitative thing. When there's a strong desire to attain the meaning of life, it influences the whole system. It's like a butterfly effect. You know, one butterfly flaps its wings in South America, earthquake happens, I don't know where, in Timbuktu. All right. So this whole system is connected. So humanity being the highest level with the potential to attain spirituality, when there's a group of people who want to attain spirituality and move forward, they pull, not seemingly, but in fact they pull the whole of humanity with them. And this is why over the past several years we're seeing a huge awakening in humanity. Although we're, economically, technologically, we're somewhere, developing, you'll see and you'll note that a lot of people in the world are actually not that happy about life. They don't feel like they're fulfilled. So they're starting to ask these questions, and a lot of people are. That's why there are a lot of spiritual teachings, there's a lot of spiritual methods all over the place. Why? Why is there all of a sudden so many spiritual teachings, so many people searching, asking questions? Well, simply because we're beginning to wake up. And that waking up procedure is happening in waves. So sooner than, hopefully not later, sooner hopefully, we'll all of a sudden start to ask this question, start to search for the meaning of life, of how to change ourselves so that we can actually find equilibrium in nature. And actually that'll solve all our problems. Individual, as a country, as a global community, in all aspects, we'll be solving all our problems. Because our biggest problem is having problems and we don't know why. Well, the reason for all our problems is because our nature is egoistic. So we disregard others and we want to fulfill ourselves, usually at the expense of others, and that causes a bad, bad vibe, let's say, all around the world. So the whole world is going into this, this descent. And on the other hand, what we have to do, if we can manage it, is if there's a group of people who study and they're trying to push spiritual development, that kind of will balance it out. And because spirituality is more qualitative than corporeality, even though a small group of people can make a huge difference in life. It can all of a sudden start to awaken people from all around the world. And the reason actually we started doing this course for Africa and Asia is simply because that demand from Africa and Asia is now coming. People are now asking, well, why are we living? What's the meaning of life? And think about it, the whole world is now, with internet, everybody's developing, and look at China, India, now they're like becoming big economic giants. But are the people really becoming happier? If you look at Western societies, they're more miserable than undeveloped countries. Why? Because you can't fulfill your pleasures the way you're living in this life. So this shift in humanity needs to happen in the formation of one reality with one humanity, all of it connected together. And the wisdom of Kabbalah, that's why, is asking us, is actually teaching us so that we could perceive reality in a different way by shifting our egoistic nature into an altruistic nature, which is actually how nature works. So the still, the vegetative, and the animate nature, they're all working in this synchronization. They're all in this natural balance and flow, except humans. We are completely out of sync, completely out of balance, and I have a clue about what's going on. So in order to raise ourselves to that level of consciousness, we need to study the wisdom of Kabbalah to change ourselves. The reason I want to explain that, why we're just one soul, the whole of reality is one interconnected, intertwined creation, is because this text that we're going to read is something really really emotional, and it's from a Kabbalist called Rav Kook, and he says like this: I wish the whole of humanity could be placed into a single body, so I could embrace them all. Now that's what, when you read it, it just sounds like a nice little sentence. But if you look at it from his point of view, he is a guy who has discovered that the whole of humanity is actually one person, one created being. And this is his attainment, of seeing everybody as one. So although it sounds like a nice sentence for a regular person reading it, he's writing that out of his attainment. He's seeing the whole of humanity as just one creature, one body. So for us to actually get to that level is also very, very important. Let's see what I have here. Okay. And Bala Islam is also writing in his letter, in one of his articles, number 4. It says, you lack nothing except to go out to a field that the Lord has blessed and collect all those flaccid organs that have dropped from your soul and join them into a single body. So the actual purpose of all our lives should be to actually gather this thing called humanity into one soul, so that we can all of us as humanity, attain this higher level of perception. Like the Kabbalists say, there is no higher, no lower. Everybody is one in this system together. And how we're going to become one is our question. That's what we're going to study now. Now, we talked about the desire to receive. We talked about how the desire to receive pleasure cannot work out. Okay, desire to receive pleasure. Okay, because they cancel each other out. Shmuel, are you there? Okay, because they cancel each other out. All right, so we have pleasure and the desire to receive pleasure. So they exist in this reality, they cancel each other out. So what we have to do now in this reality, transform the way we get pleasure by changing the direction of the intention, so that instead of receiving to fulfill myself, we'll be receiving pleasure in a different way. That by creating a good relationship with somebody, I will also get pleasure. How does that work? Okay, so we're still getting pleasure, but we're getting pleasure from a good connection. If I could just write, good connection. Good connection. All right. There we go. So we need to build that between us. So instead of trying to get something of other people, if there are two people who create this good connection, they try to help each other out. They try to build a connection of bestowal and love towards each other. What happens is they're both filled with pleasure. By giving to each other. So you're, on the one hand, you're bestowing, and on the other hand, you're filled with pleasure. And this is how we should be changing ourselves. This is the concept that we should be developing. All right? And in order to make this change, it's a whole personality change, by the way. So this whole personality change needs to be built by our work. And that is the whole of the wisdom of Kabbalah. And that here, that change is called the intention to bestow. Once we change our intention from egoism to bestowal, then we can actually have endless fulfillment. The pleasure here, you see, does not cancel out with the desire to receive. It doesn't, because we have a good connection. We have love between us. So imagine you love someone. When you love someone, you want to do something good towards them. Why? Because you care about them. When you do that, you're actually happy in your desire to receive. All right. The problem with the love in this world is egoistic. Okay, because we love somebody because we get pleasure from that love. And tomorrow, if we didn't get pleasure, we'd leave them. This is what happens when people break up. They get together first, it's a hot love and romance, okay? And all of a sudden, time goes by, they kind of grow cold, they kind of get bored, things turn into a routine. And why? The love goes away, because the love there wasn't there in the first place. They said they loved each other, but they didn't really love each other. They just loved the taste they got from each other. So what happens is, when I'm fulfilled with pleasure, well, I get fulfilled, and once I'm fulfilled, I'm not getting pleasure anymore. With that kind of love, you can't get pleasure. So love needs to be in this reciprocal way, where we're constantly building on top of it, without actually the aim for being to ourselves, towards ourselves. And that requires a change in nature. And for us to change our nature, we need to go through some deep study and, a real transformation. Okay, let's see, what else have we got here? Now, this transformation comes to us. How does that come to us? Okay. This is you in this world. And what we want to do is, we actually perceive such a small portion of the world. Our world here, what we perceive, how we live, is just such a narrow little gate. It's just a narrow little crack in the wall that we're not actually getting any pleasure from. So what we have to do is just open up this whole new reality. And this opening up this whole new reality is actually called spirituality. Well, for that to happen, I need to first get out of my skin. It means I have to get out of my self-love. Right? And I have to get out of my self-love in states called worlds. Spirituality, or spiritual worlds. These worlds are called the world of Asya, Yetzirah, Bria, Atzilut, and the world of Adam Kadmon. Now, these worlds, they're called worlds. Okay, we talked about them before, but if we haven't, we will get into it. They're called worlds. It's not actually a world in the galaxy system or something. It means a new phase of my perception, a deeper realm than I perceived from before. So these levels called worlds also have levels in between. And as we advance in spirituality, we're going to discover all these worlds, which are our connections. There are connections with the Creator. There are connections with the light. There are connections with the whole of reality. You can call it whatever you like. It doesn't really matter. The name here isn't that important. What's important here is the concept that as we advance in spirituality, we begin to change our nature. That change in nature allows us to perceive these levels, allows us to perceive a higher level of consciousness, allows us to perceive what is behind reality, that force influencing reality. So that's, for us, is very important, because at the end of the day, perfection is going to be right at the end of that line. So there are 5 worlds, and there are 5 partsufim. Partsufim means, partsuf is a structure that can bestow. It's like a soul, Okay, we can call the parts of a soul because it's a structure of bestowal. So there are 5 worlds with 5 levels of souls, and there are 5 lights that they receive, which means, lights means my understanding and my consciousness and my connection with reality, with the force behind reality, with the creator, with God, Allah, call it whatever you like. So we can get to that unity. So the worlds and the parts of him and the lights are actually definitions of how I am more integrated and connected to the attributes of the creator, which is love and bestowal. Because as I advance in those attributes, I begin to see a whole new reality. Now, when we're talking about love and bestowal, I don't want you to go and get funny ideas about how we teach kids about love and bestowal, because it's not like that. When the Kabbalists are talking about love and bestowal, they're talking about a certain attitude that we get from the creator, which is actually an attribute that allows you to feel additional sensations. So love and bestowal is not just this, relationship that we kind of build, but it's actually the key. It's like a sensory organ you're building. So it's the tool that opens up the whole of reality for you, because you're going through this shift where you begin to approach life, where you begin to feel life, understand life, and everything that's behind life from the perspective of the creator. And that's why it's opening it up. So when we're living in this world in the state of self-love, I only got myself to feel. I don't feel myself. I don't feel anybody else except myself. That's why we just read in the article, Bala Islam says, well, man just feels himself. We don't feel anybody else. Everybody else outside of us actually feels like unreal. Sometimes we even say, the whole of humanity was just created. It seems like everybody's created so that I could realize my destiny. That's the kind of sensation we have in life. So this whole, switch actually occurs from an egoistic nature when I switch it to a loving and bestowal nature, because then it's like I completely change the way I view everything. Everything I see all of a sudden just changes, flips. The whole of reality becomes something completely different. So when they're talking about love and bestowal and how we're going to build good connections, they're not talking to us like kindergarten kids. They're talking to us in a way where they're trying to describe how the perception of reality changes because your attitude has now changed. And that is what's important. And all those phases of change are known as the worlds, parts of him, and the lights being combined together. Just like in this world, when we're growing up, we're going through phases with different ages and everything. Spirituality as well, as we're advancing, we're going through different phases. And these different phases of change is described as our intention to bestow. So the higher we go up in spirituality, the higher, the better, or the more corrected intention I have towards the whole of creation and the whole of humanity, which is part of that. Okay, so when we're talking about bestowal, just to sum it all up, we're not talking about being good people as they think about it on the corporeal level. Obviously, you should be a good person in corporeality as well. You shouldn't harm other people. You should be a good person in corporeality as well. But when we're talking about love and bestowal and to being a real human being, that Adam actually, although it means in Hebrew, it means human, all right? So, and sometimes noted as he or whatever, but when we're talking about human or being a man, we're talking about man and women in terms of a structural change. So this has nothing to do with sexes or anything. So don't get the text wrong. When we're talking about Adam, man, we're talking about a spiritual structure that can be bestowing just like the Creator, and he or she, any one of you, can actually perceive the Creator while living in this world. And that's the whole idea. Okay, it's very important to get our heads around this concept. And all of these things, the 5 worlds and how we need to go through them to attain bestowal and love and so on, actually happen in this world while we live here. It's very, very important to get our heads around that as well. A lot of students who come to the wisdom of Kabbalah, obviously from around the world, anybody can study the wisdom of Kabbalah, come and because they've had this religious teaching in their childhood, or they come from a background of a culture where they had religious teachings before, they immediately start to think about things that are going to happen after they pass away from this life. But truth of the matter is, doesn't matter. Like, how can anything happen after you die? Everything you can do while you're here alive. So your background, culture, or religion doesn't really matter when you're studying the wisdom of Kabbalah. You just need to get your head around this concept that we were created in this world specifically so that we can attain everything in this world. Because otherwise, when you die, you think you're going to go somewhere and do things somewhere else. It's not realistic. You're completely, pretty much eliminating, pacifying this whole reality. So we need to, get our heads around a few concepts here in the perception of reality, how it's all felt inside of us, and how this change needs to be not by getting rid of our desire to receive pleasure, but to actually start to use it in a different way, which is more useful, which is more parallel, more in tune with the laws of nature, which are actually the laws of the Creator. The laws of nature are the same thing as the Creator's laws, and if we equalize ourselves to that, we can bring balance and feel the Creator while we're living in this world, and the whole of reality will actually get into balance as well. Now we're, humanity's trying to cut down on consumption, get rid of plastic, and do all kinds of things. We won't be successful by doing these things. What we need to do is understand that our nature needs to change. Because if we don't pollute with plastic, we'll pollute with something else. It's like having these electrical cars, right? So we're trying to get rid of fossil fuel. In order to get rid of fossil fuel, they're making electric cars. Electric cars need batteries. Batteries need copper. Do you know how much mining they will need to do? Do you know how much deeper they need to go inside the soil to get copper out? They're literally going to destroy the world to try to save it from fossil fuel. So it's crazy. You can't. So on the one hand, you're trying to create environmentally friendly vehicles to get rid of a pollution problem, but on the other hand, in order to save the world from fossil fuels, you're digging up so much copper and drilling so much deeper into the world that you're actually causing damage to the whole planet. So, as you can see, humanity will not be able to solve any of its problems as long as their intention is for themselves. So this is something we need to understand, and the benefit of the world and the benefit of humanity is actually now at a phase where we need to go through a conscious, call it evolution if you like. We need to get to the next level of our evolution and really become a human, really become an entity where we're completely connected with the whole of nature, and we have full understanding of how nature works, and we actually feel like we're a part of it, and we're actively working in a balanced way inside it. And that's how we need to change in a nutshell. So the wisdom of Kabbalah will bring us to this gradual understanding, and it will elevate our level of consciousness as we go higher and higher. And with that, what we're going to do is going to end our lesson today with this lesson. Next week, we're going to touch on a lesson called the laws of root and branch. And as you can see with the wisdom of Kabbalah, as we're advancing from one topic to another, what's really going on is we're adding Okay, so we're adding one step at a time to the next degree so that we can advance. We can add some more pillars, let's say, to construct this building. So we're strengthening our foundations. So next lesson we're going to talk about root and branch, where we actually begin to discover that how everything happens in this world, our thoughts, our actions, desires have a root. There's something that awakens us to do something. It pushes us to do something. So we'll be going more and more into how our whole universe works, how we work as well, if you think about it, how all our actions are, not even conscious. When we're doing a lot of things, we wake up, get dressed, everything we do, if you just look at your life, your daily routine, there's not a lot of thought process going in there. What's really going in there is just you doing things. It's like an animal does. Chickens wake up, they get out of the hen box, start rolling around, and they feed, and they return back, and they do the whole thing all over again, day after day, until they grow up and they become a chicken on our table. So humanity is pretty much like that as well. But what we now need to do is add that layer of spirituality and to start moving forward as humanity. Otherwise, as you can see, these natural disasters will be pushing us to live in a restrained way by force. So the best way to be developing and the best way to move forward is at a conscious level, where we understand why we do things and why we need to do them this way, so that nature doesn't compress us into some miserable state. So I hope this lesson added a bit more knowledge towards your Wisdom of Kabbalah education, and I hope that we'll be able to continue. If you have any questions, please, you can post them through to us through the education site, education center site, and what we can do is we can answer all those questions to you in our next lesson. And hopefully we'll see you again. Hopefully Anthony will be back next week with us as well. We had a bit of a hiccup today. As you can imagine, trying to get through traffic and getting here is not always easy on time. So until next Tuesday, have a great day. All the best.